This item sounds like a pretty cool find. Next, Jin-Woo checked out the pouch. Inside was something called Kasaka's venom gland. It's super rare to get this from a Kasaka. If you drink it, your skin will get tougher, but there's a big downside: the poison will hurt your muscles forever. The good news is that it gives you a buff called Kasaka's armor scales, which reduces physical damage by 20%. The bad news is that it also gives you a debuff called damaged muscles, which decreases your strength by 35%. Jin-Woo had mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, Kasaka's venom fang could be an awesome replacement for his broken sword, but on the other hand he wasn't sure if it was worth the risk of damaging his muscles. Jin-Woo was super stoked about his new weapon. Its attack power was twice as strong as his old broken sword, but what really got him excited were the cool extras it came with, like paralysis and drain debuffs. At first he was thrilled to see that the venom gland was an A-rank item, which meant it would be tough to get, but when he read the description more closely, his excitement started to fade. The idea of reducing damage by 20% sounded amazing. It was something you'd expect from a super powerful A-rank item. But there was a huge catch. It would also lower Jin-Woo's strength by 35 points. That was a big problem, because Jin-Woo had been working really hard to build up his strength. It felt like a trade-off that wasn't worth making. The item was like a double-edged sword. It could help him in one way, but hurt him in another. Imagine getting a super cool gift, but it's actually pretty useless. That's what happened to Jin-Woo. He got a dagger and some poison, but they were like a white elephant, not very helpful at all. The problem was that the dagger would take away 35 points from his strength if he used it. That's a big deal for Jin-Woo right now. But maybe one day when he's super strong it won't matter as much. For now though, it's just taking up space. Jin-Woo made a face and put the dagger and poison away in his inventory. It would have been better if they were at least a little more powerful, like an A-rank dagger and some C-rank poison. Then he might not have felt so let down. Jin-Woo was ready to ditch the weak C-rank poison. As he tossed it, a message suddenly appeared. It said the dungeon would go back to normal now that the boss was beaten. Everything got fuzzy for a few seconds, and Jin-Woo's head spun a little when his vision cleared. But when he looked around, he found himself in a regular subway station. The lights in the subway station were super bright, and the tracks were dry. But something was off. There was nobody around, no people, no trains, nothing. Jin-Woo checked his watch to see if the subway had stopped running for the day. It was only 10 o'clock, so that couldn't be it. He thought back to when he arrived at Hapjin Station, which was around lunchtime. That meant he'd been there for over 9 hours. Time sure flew by. Luckily, Jin-Woo's energy had gotten a boost each time he leveled up, or he would have been exhausted by now. Still, the subway should be running, right? But no matter how long he waited, no train came. Shrugging, Jin-Woo decided to leave the station. As he walked to the exit, he didn't see a single person. It was really weird. Jin-Woo was trudging up the stairs when a voice shouted out, "Hey!" It was a surprise, but also kind of a relief to hear someone else. He looked up to see a soldier standing there, gun in hand. The soldier's expression was stern, and Jin-Woo felt his muscles tense up. "Who are you? What were you doing down there? Didn't you hear the news?" Jin-Woo shook his head, feeling a little confused. "What happened?" he asked. The soldier raised an eyebrow. "What kind of question is that?" As he took a step closer to Jin-Woo, his eyes landed on the broken sword in Jin-Woo's hand. Jin-Woo had a problem with his broken sword. It wouldn't fit back into his inventory. He didn't want to leave it behind in the dungeon, so he decided to bring it with him. As he walked out, a soldier's eyes landed on the sword. The soldier looked Jin-Woo up and down, taking in his worn-out clothes and the signs of a tough battle. When he saw the scars on Jin-Woo's gear, his expression changed from suspicion to surprise, and then to understanding. "Are you a hunter?" the person asked. Jin-Woo nodded, saying, "Yes, I am." The soldier's expression changed, and he apologized for being rude. "This way, sir. Please follow me," he said. Jin-Woo was confused, but he just shrugged and replied, Okay." He didn't think it was worth explaining what was probably a big misunderstanding. As he walked with the soldier, Jin-Woo looked around. Something felt off. Things didn't seem quite right. The street was completely deserted, except for soldiers and police officers. Jin-Woo saw some creepy things: dead magic beasts, smashed cars, and buildings that were totally wrecked. He quickly figured out what had happened. A gate must have opened up somewhere nearby. This wasn't something you saw every day, not with the hunter system in place to keep things under control. But sometimes a gate would suddenly appear in a weird location, and nobody would notice, until it was too late. When that happened, the army would rush in to handle the situation, until the hunters could get there to take over. Soldiers were in a tough spot. Their guns couldn't hurt the magic beasts. But they knew they had to be brave and make some sacrifices so that regular people could get to safety. It was a harsh truth, but they were basically acting as human shields. Someone had to do it, and it fell to the young soldiers to put themselves in harm's way. The soldier in charge of Jin-Woo spoke up. "Thank you." A moment later he added, "We're safe because of hunters like you who work so hard." Jin-Woo wanted to say thank you back to the soldier. It was a strange feeling. Hunters were grateful to soldiers, and soldiers were grateful to hunters. They all shared a common goal, protecting someone, or something they cared about. Just then, a message crackled over the radio, making the soldier's face light up. Most of the beasts have been taken care of, and there's just one big one left. The voice on the radio said. Jin-Woo nodded, taking in the news. He got what was going on without needing an explanation from the soldier. He could feel a strong energy nearby, like something big was lurking around the corner. The hunters were closing in and he sensed their excitement and fear. His special ability to pick up on things he couldn't see was on high alert, giving him a hunch about what was happening. Something inside him was screaming that this was the real deal, the boss he had been searching for. Then he saw it. A group of around 10 hunters were facing off against an enormous stone giant in a nearby empty lot. This giant was huge, as tall as a utility pole. It was a special kind of magic beast called a golem. The soldier let out a terrified squeak and took a step back. He had clearly never seen a magic beast before. Because he froze in his tracks as soon as it appeared, most people would react the same way. Seeing something on TV is totally different from seeing it in person. But Jin-Woo was calm and cool. He looked around and sized up the situation. "Healers, focus on keeping our tanks safe," he called out. The healers yelled back, "We're doing our best." "Already," someone else shouted. "Why won't this thing go down?" Then Jin-Woo turned to the rest of his team and asked, "What's going on, dealers? Why aren't we making a dent in this monster?" "This thing is not going down anytime soon," one of the hunters shouted. The problem was that the stone golem's defense was too strong, and they didn't have enough magic users to take it down. The low-rank hunters were the first to respond to the emergency, but they were no match for the powerful creature. They had weak attacks and defenses, which made the battle a desperate fight. Just then the stone golem slammed its massive fist on the ground, making the tank stumble. "Ah!" The hunter cried out in pain as blood spilled from his mouth. "No way, if this keeps up our tank will be finished," someone exclaimed. The mage was running out of magic power, and didn't know what to do. "What am I supposed to do? I'm almost out of magic," he shouted back. The hunters were clearly exhausted and struggling to keep up. "Where are the stronger hunters?" someone asked, hoping for some backup. But for now they were on their own, fighting a losing battle against the powerful stone golem. Jin-Woo watched the scene with a sharp eye. He thought to himself, "I can do this." He took a few slow steps back. The big golem boss had a strong defense, but it didn't seem as powerful as he thought at first. It was probably weaker than that tough blue venom-fanged monster from the other dungeon. Jin-Woo's plan was to find a way to get past its defense. All he needed was one super strong hit that could blast right through it. When he was far enough away, Jin-Woo pulled his arm back, getting ready for the perfect shot. The muscles in the arm gripping the broken sword started to bulge. Thick veins popped out all the way up to his hand. He poured all his energy into his right arm, making it super tense. When it was as tight as a stretched bowstring, he thrust it forward with incredible speed, almost as fast as sound. Go! Just then, D-rank hunter Hansu Lee felt like all hope was lost. Hanso was at his limit. His trusty shield was cracking under the pressure. The healers were running out of magic, and it was getting harder for them to keep up with all the injuries. If things kept going like this, everyone would be in big trouble. It was time to make a tough decision. Hanso thought that if he sacrificed himself, the others might have a chance to escape before stronger hunters arrived. It was either that or watch everyone die. Hanso's heart was racing, and he broke out in a cold sweat as he made up his mind. He turned back to the others and shouted, "I've got this, so you guys." But just as he did, something caught his eye. Something shiny was zooming straight at them. But it was moving so fast that Hanso couldn't actually see what it was. All he knew was that something was flying their way, and it was almost there.
Cock.
The golem's head suddenly shattered into a million pieces after being hit by the mystery object.
What the?
Hanso stared in shock. The headless golem stumbled around, but the other hunters were thrilled. They cheered and launched one final attack.
Yes.
We're doing it. It's going down. Just a little more. We can do this. None of the hunters had seen what hit the golem because they were too busy fighting, but Hanso had been standing right in front of it, so he was the only one who saw everything. The golem let out a loud roar, and then finally fell to the ground with a massive thud. Doobie yoo-yoo-ooed. A huge cloud of dust rose up as it hit the dirt. The hunters were overjoyed, cheering and shouting. We did it. We beat it. But Hanso just shook his head. He knew their attacks hadn't been enough to take down the golem. He quickly searched the area around the fallen creature. What could have smashed the head of this stone monster? He wondered. As he looked around, Hanso found a broken sword on the ground. The sword was made of steel, but it had almost no special power. A powerful golem that had taken on over 10 hunters and won had just been defeated by a weak sword like this. It didn't make sense. Hansu looked back at the destroyed golem, and then at what was left of the sword. He was totally confused. He ran past the cheering hunters to find out who had thrown the sword. As he got closer, he shouted, "Excuse me." There was only one person standing there, a single soldier. "Hey, did you mean me?" a voice asked. "Yes, you," came the reply. A soldier gulped as a huge hunter approached him. The hunter's size was intimidating, and it showed how scary these hunters could be to ordinary people. Hansu held up a sword. "Did you throw this?" he asked. The soldier looked confused and turned around to see what was behind him. "Oh, that was," he started to say, but his voice trailed off as he blinked in surprise. Hansu was totally confused. Wait. I could have sworn there was another hunter here just a second ago. But when he turned around, there was no one behind the soldier. The soldier looked pretty confused too, scanning the area to see if he had missed something. Hansu scratched his head, staring at the broken piece of a weapon in his hand. He was thinking about the huge amount of power that must have been used to cause all this destruction. It seemed like a really strong hunter might have been there, but there was no way to know for sure, because whoever it was had vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo was already on his way back home. He spun around as soon as he saw the golem stumble. He was sure he'd killed it. When you defeat a magical creature, you get to keep all the profits. So if he wanted to, he could have said the golem's treasure was his, for the taking. But there was a catch. He'd have to prove that he was the one who actually killed it. The problem was, who would believe that a huge golem had been taken down by someone as low-ranked as an E-rank hunter? He was in a tough spot. The broken sword and the soldier's story wouldn't be enough to convince anyone of what really happened. And that would only be the beginning of his problems. He'd also have to explain how he got strong enough to beat the powerful golem. The more he thought about it, the more downsides he could see. One thing was for sure, he had an amazing power that allowed him to level up and get stronger. Jin-Woo didn't think it was worth revealing his secret just to get one golem, but he had no other choice. Luckily, things didn't totally fall apart. He actually got something amazing out of it. As soon as the golem fell, he got a message. "You have leveled up." This meant his level went up again, all thanks to beating that golem. Jin-Woo was thrilled. He even levels up when he defeats regular magic beasts. This was seriously good news. Jin-Woo's day was finally over. He trudged into his apartment building, a worn-out place on the edge of downtown. The elevator creaked as it took him to the 9th floor. Jin-Woo found his key and unlocked the door. Inside, everything was dark. His sister, Junna, had left him a note and some food, but she wasn't home. She must still be studying at the library. Jin-Woo's stomach growled as he looked at the cold food on the table. Jin-Woo's sister had made him a special meal to celebrate his discharge from the hospital. Their mom had been in the hospital for a few years, so it was just the two of them at home now. On the table, Jin-Woo saw a notepad with a message scrawled in his sister's super bubbly handwriting. "Don't skip dinner. I'll check if you finished everything." She must have been really busy with school, but she still found time to cook for him. Jin-Woo smiled and sat down at the table, feeling grateful. But before he dug in, he wanted to check on something. "Stat screen," he said to himself. Suddenly a bunch of numbers and words popped up in front of him. Name, Jin-Woo Sung. Job, none. HP 220. That's his health points. Fatigue, 2. He was a bit tired. Level 18. He was getting stronger. Title, Wolf Assassin. That sounded cool. MP 350. His magic points. His stats looked like this. Strength 48, stamina 27, agility 27, intelligence 27, perception 27. He also had some special skills. Passive skill, unknown. He still hadn't figured out what this did. It was already at the max level. Willpower level 1. This helped him stay focused. Active skill, dash level 1. This let him run super fast. It had been a long day, but seeing all his stats and skills made Jin-Woo feel a bit better. Now he was ready to eat the meal his sister had made for him. This day had been super long, but it was worth it. His level was now at 18, which was a big deal. His strength stat was almost at 50, and his other abilities were getting stronger too. He had figured out how his agility and perception worked, which was really cool. He also got an awesome dagger that could hurt his enemies in lots of ways, plus a ton of gold. The only problem was, he wasn't totally sure how to use the dagger's special powers yet. He didn't even count the weird poison he found as part of his achievements. Overall, exploring the instance dungeon had been a huge success. Gina quietly locked the door behind her so she wouldn't wake up her brother. He usually slept really soundly at this time of day, and she didn't want to disturb him. People who leave early in the morning often try to be careful not to wake up their families, and Gina was no exception. She slipped out into the morning, trying not to make a sound. Gina spun around, and that's when she heard it.
Going to school? The voice made her jump.
She looked up to see Jin-Woo jogging towards her. He was wearing sweats and running shoes, and his hood was pulled down low over his face. It looked like he'd been out for a run. Gina's eyes were already big, but they got even bigger as she stared at him in surprise. Wait, she said, taking a step back. Hey, you were already up? Gina asked, surprised. Her brother replied, Yeah, I've been up for a while. Just watch out for traffic. Okay? Gina nodded slowly, still feeling a bit sleepy. Right, she trailed off as she watched her brother head back inside their apartment. It was weird. He usually slept in later than her. Jin-Woo wasn't lazy or anything. It's just that Gina had a habit of waking up super early for her age. As she stood there, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about her brother. She could have sworn his back looked wider than before, but that didn't make any sense. The human body can't just change size in a few days. That's crazy talk. Gina was probably just imagining things. Then, out of nowhere, Jin-Woo handed her an umbrella. What's this for? She asked, looking up at the sky. It was still super early and dark outside, but it didn't look like rain or anything. It doesn't seem like it's going to rain, she said, confused. Take it with you anyway, Jin-Woo told her. But Gina hesitated. The umbrella was really heavy. Just take it, he insisted. Gina's brother slammed the door shut, almost catching her fingers. What's your problem? She muttered to herself. He had just yelled at her for worrying about carrying a folding umbrella. It's not that heavy. Don't be a baby, he had said. Gina kicked the door lightly to show. She didn't like his attitude, but then she stuffed the umbrella into her bag and took off. As she walked away, she thought back to how her brother had been standing when he slammed the door. Something seemed off. His eye level had been in a weird spot. She thought to herself, wow, he's definitely taller than before. She wondered, do guys keep growing even in their 20s? But she quickly shook her head and dashed off to school. As she left, the door clicked shut behind her. Meanwhile, Jin-Woo locked the door and headed inside. He pulled out his phone and said, inventory. It didn't matter what word he used, storage, invent or inventory. As long as it worked. He had figured that out after trying a few different words. It was the same with checking his messages. He just needed to say the right thing and it would open up. Something cool happened when he gave a command to open his inbox. As long as the word meant open, it worked like a charm. He had just gotten a new umbrella from a mystery box, and now it was safely stored in his digital inventory. But he wasn't thrilled about it. Another dud, he thought. It had been 4 days since he first explored an instance dungeon. Every time he opened a mystery box, he hoped to find another key to one of these dungeons. But so far, no luck. Keys seemed to be really rare, and he hadn't gotten another one yet. With a shrug, he decided to call it quits for now. He headed to his bedroom, plopped down on the edge of his bed, and took a break. Today was the day he had to make a big decision. He looked at his stats: strength, 48 stamina, 27 agility, 27 intelligence, 27 perception, 27. He had 12 ability points to use, and he got them by completing daily quests for the past 4 days. He made sure to get every reward he could, but now he was stuck. He hadn't used any of his ability points yet because he couldn't decide what to do with them. The problem was that it was just too hard to choose. He thought about putting points into strength, Let's talk about some cool stats that can make a big difference. First, there's one stat that's definitely worth investing in. You'll never regret spending points on it. Another great one is agility. It might not matter when you're fighting a weak enemy, but when you face tougher ones, speed becomes super important. Then there are stamina and perception. Having more stamina is always a good thing, and perception is turning out to be really useful too. But then there's intelligence, and that's where things get tricky. There was one stat that still had him stumped. It had gone up a lot, but he didn't feel any smarter. He wasn't better at memorizing things or doing math problems. This stat probably had something to do with magic, but maybe he didn't need it just yet. He still had 4 options to choose from: strength, agility, stamina, and perception. This is still too hard to decide. Getting rid of one option hadn't made a difference. He just couldn't make up his mind. He did know that strength and agility were a great team. Being super strong wouldn't help if he couldn't hit his target, and being able to hit a target wasn't cool if he couldn't do much damage when he did hit it. He thought about strength and agility as a team. It would be cool if they were equal. If he made his agility stronger, he wouldn't need to worry as much about stamina right now. The thing is, agility and stamina don't really get along. When he's super agile, he's less likely to get hurt, but stamina is only helpful when he's taking a lot of damage. He can't ignore stamina completely, but it seems weird to work on both at the same time. After thinking about it, he finally figured out what was most important to him. Jin-Woo had a plan to boost his skills. He decided to focus on agility first, then perception, and finally stamina. Since he'd already worked hard on building his strength, he didn't want to spend more points on it right now. He was going to increase his agility soon, so it made sense to improve his perception instead of stamina for the time being. With that in mind, Jin-Woo added 2 points to his strength. Suddenly he heard a ping, and his stats updated. Strength, 50 stamina, 27 agility, 27 intelligence, 27 perception, 27. He had 10 ability points left to use. Jin-Woo's goal was to reach 50 points in strength, and now he'd finally hit that mark. Jin-Woo had been thinking about this for a while. Now he decided to spend 8 points on agility. Here's how his stats look now: strength 50 stamina, 27 agility, 35 intelligence, 27 perception, 27. He had 2 ability points left. There wasn't anything special about his choice, he just liked it when his stats were multiples of 5. To him, it looked cleaner and more organized that way. For example, his strength was a neat 50, and now his agility was 30. Jin-Woo had made a random choice to make his stats multiples of 5, but it felt kind of cool seeing them all lined up like that. He was almost done assigning his points. For the last 2, he decided to boost his perception, but used up all his points, and he was finished. Here's how his stats looked now: strength, 50 stamina, 27 agility, 35 intelligence, 27 perception, 29. He had no more points left to use. Jin-Woo was a little annoyed that he couldn't get his perception to exactly 30. He wished he had more points, but it was too late now. Everything else looked good to him though.